between that and just other phenomena, like hallucinations and all kinds of things that we know about much better than life actually existing elsewhere. I think we have a ton of options that we need to seriously consider before we take a leap to that there's biological life elsewhere in the universe or another universe. That's my main thing, is that we do need to tackle all the stuff about which we know, and then eventually get to the, okay, well, all these things that we know about have been exhausted. Now we can turn to something about which we essentially know nothing except claims, vague claims.
Well, you were saying that, oh, sorry, keep going.
No, I was just actually, frankly, at the moment, I noticed my computer's telling me it's going to force a restart in 4 minutes. So I'm trying to see how I can actually change that right now.
Gotcha.
That is super annoying that it's just telling me it's going to do it without, hey, click here to stop it from happening.
Yeah.
Sounds like Microsoft.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, like Jordan Peter had mentioned that scientists were studying mushrooms and they were administering mushrooms to patients and they all had the same hallucination. Wondered if you've encountered any of that.
I'm sorry, what was the beginning of that?
Jordan Peterson had mentioned this, but there were several scientists that were studying with mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, and they were administering them to patients.
Okay, yeah.
And they were experiencing the same exact hallucinations.
I don't recall that being said about mushrooms, but I do recall that tests were conducted on a substance called DMT, and that was the result of it. Mm-hmm. Was that, I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out my computer while I'm trying to think of this. So basically,
no worries.
What came out of it is, yes, because group hallucinations are not really, they're basically unknown, because hallucination by definition happens within a person's brain.
Subjective, not objective.
Right.
But if it's multiple, it sort of hints to objectivity.
So the results of the DMT, yeah, it was that these people seem to actually be experiencing the same, if not very similar experiences. And what was interesting about it is the researcher that was most well known for the most well known of these experiments himself held to a Buddhist worldview. And after the research was done, he had to go on sabbatical. He basically took off to another country. He went to Canada, actually, another world altogether, right? And he basically, because he thought, well, my Buddhism tells me that there's no such thing as an objective reality. But this was demonstrating that there is, and it just blew him away. And he had to kind of just escape for a while and try to go and think about it. That's what was really fascinating about it. So what they were experiencing is an absolute shared reality, which really couldn't be accounted for by just brain states. You know, it's as if, I don't know, I'm just saying, it's as if they had actually entered another realm.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's just what I heard about that.
Or something entered this realm.
Or something entered this realm and projected some kind of
gateway,
simulacrum, as they say, right?
It's been a long time.
Some kind of simulated reality.
I know a guy that does that. What is it called? It's like DMT.
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca, yeah. He's been there.
Yeah.
He's done it a few times now.
Yeah.
Well, and, you know, he claims close to God, but see, he had become a Christian, and then that wasn't enough, and he kept searching. So now he's into all kinds of stuff. I don't know if it's a healthy thing. I'm not sure.
There's another thing that I looked into. It. To me, I don't even know how you could do it, but they like open the third. What's that? Oh, your computer.
Guys, listen, my computer just.
Yeah.
That's why I like my Apple.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Maybe that's why Bill Gates got the pie in the face.
Well, actually, I think it was Windows must be listening in to our conversation, and nope, we can't have any of that tonight. Got to shut her down, folks. Nah, I
My
think that's
Windows
just
used to do that.
coincidental. Yeah, I remember
Nothing
that
crazy.
too. Yeah, I uh, I had Windows 7, and then I had work, and uh, my work wouldn't work with Windows 10, and so naturally it updated to Windows 10, even though I told it not to.
Yeah, I had
But
Windows 7, and I've got a CD DVD player in my laptop, and it would work, and I could watch movies and everything. And then I told it not to update to Windows 10. It did, and now my CD-ROM doesn't work. I mean, my DVD doesn't work at all.
naturally. I was going to ask Ken what he thought about when he comes back. Hopefully, I'll get a chance. What David was mentioning about like the cabal and where they get their power, and if Ken saw a connection with the demons and stuff
What
like
did
that.
David say? Or yeah, what did he say?
He was saying that he was asking more than saying. I think he was saying like what's in it for where do they get their power, or what's in it for them type thing.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem to me.
Well, I think there's a psychological high to it because you feel powerful.
Special.
But yeah, I mean, but not only that, uh it seems like they have the power. Not only is it just a thought, they literally have power over the media and monetary systems and people's lives, that small businesses, and really affecting a lot of people these days globally.
I think there's
Me
two.
and my son went out to, we were going to go out to eat, right? And we're going to go out to, I don't know if it's a chain or whatever, but bigger chain, kind of like a sit down breakfast joint. And so I thought things are opening back up. We'll go there. Oh, we go there. They're closed. They're for sale. So I went to another place and they were open, but that was, kind of shocking to see a bigger household name go under. Not big as like Burger King or McDonald's, but I don't know if it's just regional or what.
Well,
it'll probably take 5 minutes for that computer restart.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a few places that are not going to be reopening.
Mm-hmm.
When you have
some places.
My daughter's restaurant holds 300 people, and they're allowed to serve 50. And that place rocks. What are they going to do?
I had to
that's
go to my local hardware store that's my local feed store, and I was actually stopped at the front door. I couldn't come in until a customer came out. And they used to not do that. I mean, it was done at Walmart, but it wasn't done there, and now they're doing it there.
Yeah, I heard they're doing that at the local construction store here too, and I heard it was just packed, and there was a line like 2 or 3 blocks to get in.
Well, that wasn't that painful.
Welcome back.
I'm back. I jumped to a different computer.
Oh, okay. As I said, that was pretty fast.
So no way. It's still at 15%, updating and then restarting.
Yeah.
Against your will.
I will assimilate.
I was going to ask if while you're gone, we were talking about a little bit. And we have another gentleman that was asking about, are you familiar with like the Cabal or the Illuminati or whatever that? Heard of that before, I'm sure.
Yes.
he was asking what's in it for them, where do they get their power? Do you see like demons like helping those type of people or having an influence on them?
I mean,
Maybe,
I can't speak to the reality of any of it, but I mean,
or just in general can influence people then.
yeah, the standard fare seems to be very much of a Faustian bargain, right? So they're more than pleased to give you some petty success in this life because, well, that's pretty much all you're going to have. Then you'll be condemned, and this, even if you were the master of the whole world for a few decades, what does it mean? What does it mean if a man gains the whole world but loses his own soul, right?
Right. So, we're talking and we're thinking like, prayer, because if that's their power, what's our power, and if our power is prayer, praying for them to, the truth, and then also for, any of the type of demonic activity to, come out of that and to turn to Christ, and having
Yeah.
God be their center.
I mean, I know
Christ.
if even a year and a half before I got saved, you would have told me you're going to become a Christian, I would have thought you were just flat insane, period. Just goodbye, just lock you up and go away because it was never going to happen. There's absolutely no way whatsoever, ever, never.
Yeah, I would have never guessed I would have become Christian either, because I used to not like laugh, but I'd be like, man, them Christians are stupid, weak.
Yeah,
Why would I want to be Christian?
yeah.
So how did you get
But
saved, Ken?
Oh, I sinned and got saved.
gotcha. Yeah. Naturally. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, thing is, I got saved when I was 27, so that's quite a long time of life experience and just thinking through issues. And yeah, I mean, it all just came to a head, right? Mostly when I recognized that I was playing the oh so open-minded game, but I wasn't really being that, right? I was playing the diversity game really before diversity was a hip thing, but then recognizing, well, wait a minute, I claim I'm being that, but I'm not really being that. Right? Just like anybody who pretends to be oh so open-minded, and the second they hear about Christianity, that mind shuts down, right? Just completely closed. No,
Like Deepak
no.
Chopra.
Oh yeah, no tolerance, no diversity, no nothing, just absolutism. Yeah, I mean, I got caught up in that for way too long. But actually, I mean, there's no way to just say, well, what happened is this one thing. It just isn't like that. But one big thing was definitely contemplating the problem of evil. That definitely is one of the things that the Lord used to draw me to himself. And in part because, as a Jew, I just thought about, well, what's all this suffering my people have been through all these millennia, really? And if there's no ultimate redeemer, then it was literally for nothing, total waste. And especially if you're of the atheist evolutionary mentality, it's like, well, it literally is for nothing. It is all a waste. And it just didn't seem like that's the way the world was constructed, is to just be these accidentally existing biological entities who stuff happens to, and it doesn't really matter in the end. None of it does. And that's one of the traditional tests of a worldview, is one that actually accounts for the world the way we know it to be, which is just a place that's full of beauty and love and wonder and awe-inspiring scenery and landscapes and nature, and also a horrendous, brutal, violent, dark place, right? How do you account for those two? And the account in the Bible is, well, it was created beautiful and it underwent the fall, and then it'll be redeemed. That kind of accounts for everything. Not kind of, it actually accounts for everything. Yeah. So that was definitely, in fact, I remember at my sister's wedding, the man that performed the wedding, I had a chance to speak to him for a little bit afterwards, and it turns out he was Jewish, but he had an interest in Buddhism, and that's kind of the exact thing that I brought up to him. It's exactly the concerns I had just a few years before. And I was saying, well, if there's no ultimate redeemer, then everything we've been through as a people is for nothing. You know, and that was pretty much what I left him with. Planted that little nugget in his ear.
Yeah, I mean, everything is for nothing if you don't have Christ, I guess, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So
So
yeah,
Rob,
But
your question,
whose question?
Rob's question, did
Oh,
because I remember Lori was asking, how did you get saved? And that sort of
yeah.
circumvented what Rob was.
Uh,
I think I remember the answer to that question.
what was the question? Because I've lost track as well.
Where are they getting their power from? What?
yeah, we went from aliens to Illuminati to how'd you get saved? Well, I mean, I think that's part of the whole alien thing too. Is for example, I guess recently, the guy's name Greer, one of the big hotshots in ufology today. Greer, what's his first name? Oh, it might come to me. His last name's Greer, though, and he's well known for
Looks like
taking
Stephen Greer.
Yes, Stephen Greer. He's well known for taking large groups of people out into the middle of the desert and just basically summoning,
Manifesting.
yeah, literally summoning whatever they are, right? Just by the will to power. I mean, I guess that could be seen as a form of technology that you just call upon these beings and poof, they happen to know that you're calling them and they show up. And he talks about how something like that is by necessity and definition, it's going to have to change your theology. Specifically uses the word theology. It's going to have to change your worldview. It's going to have to change your philosophy, your theology. It's going to have to. So, and it makes you wonder, well, okay, is that what this is all about? Because that's definitely one thing that quote unquote aliens have been telling us since day one, is that they, for some strange reason, are interested in human theology, telling us how we're wrong and telling us how they're right about theology. Apparently, they're willing to traverse the vast distances of space or dimensions to set us straight about our spirituality.
Oh yeah, you got me thinking what I was going to mention earlier. So there's some people that say like Christ consciousness is like your chakras and like taking your tongue and like putting it behind your mouth or behind your throat and like closing it, and then like the secretion comes down or something.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that before?
Oh yeah. I still do that just as a habit, not as a spiritual practice. But when I was in martial arts, we were taught to do that.
Oh really?
So just as a
Seems like
habit.
almost impossible.
Well, no, I don't know what you're specifically talking about. What we were told is you touch your tongue to the roof of your mouth. That's about as far as it went. It's not like we're
Oh,
trying to
gotcha.
Yeah, I would imagine it'd be pretty dangerous to try to swallow your own tongue like that.
Yeah, I mean, to
So
me, it
you
looked
took-
very dangerous.
yeah.
I mean,
If
I'd,
if they're talking about trying to tongue down your own throat, you could definitely die that way very easily.
yeah, I mean, looked very. I'm surprised that you know, I have no experience on it, and I was like, gosh, it just seems like highly dangerous. That's what I thought as well.
Oh yeah, but I would imagine it's meant to serve the same purpose, which is just to kind of um, have a circuit connect,
Right,
make the circuit,
exactly.
yeah, something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Kind of like
yeah.
grounding.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, I mean, basically, what I've noticed is aliens generally. I'm pretty sure we've had this discussion before, but they generally tell us three main things. And my issue is that they make good points and it's true, but then their solution is what I have a problem with. So they'll tell us, you know, you humans are polluting the earth, you're destroying your planet. Okay, I can definitely go with that. And then you humans are always fighting each other about politics and governments, right? Nations. Okay, yeah, check, no problem, gotcha. And you humans are always fighting each other about theology, right? Religions.
Hmm.
Yep, okay, yeah, I can agree with those 3 points. But their solution is then you need to form a one world government with a one world religion and worship the earth. That's their solution right there. And it just so happens that between Romans chapter 1 and the book of Revelation, that's the things we're warned against, right? Nature worship and one world government and religion.
Yeah, I haven't seen one world government in the Bible anywhere. I don't see that. I don't.
I think it's just it's it's kind of hidden behind the fact that there'll be one ultimate ruler in the end. You know,
Gotcha.
one of the beasts. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine all of you know the word Antichrist does not appear in the book of Revelation, right? So it's one of the someone who manifests as the ultimate ruler. So that's where that concept would come from, is that if you have one person who's essentially ruling the world, then there you go. That's just, there's no other really cogent way of putting that, but that it's a one world government.
And I definitely see the Antichrist in like 2 Thessalonians or something like that, but I don't see a one world ruler. Or, you know, uh, I see that being in the past. I don't see that being in the future or anything. So it's kind of hard for me to imagine the Bible being anti that or even having a stance on it.
Frankly, I think it's a best practice to ignore the word Antichrist if you're discussing whatever, even if you're discussing dispensational eschatology, you still should stay away from that word because it does not fit into any scenarios. I don't care if you're a dispensationalist or not, it doesn't fit there.
Hmm.
John is very explicit. The Antichrist is anybody who denies Christ came in the flesh,
Right.
which is obviously a statement he made against Gnosticism. And there's no indication that this, again, even if you take a dispensational eschatological view, there's no indication that this world ruler is going to deny that Jesus came in the flesh. So then it's almost like, are you just setting people up for that, for this ruler? If it happens to be, if it's still future, and this person says, hey, I'm not denying that. Oh, okay, then you must be okay. By our book, you're okay. Well, that's going to be a problem. You know what I mean?
Where in your studies, if you've addressed this at all, about kings and emperors throughout the ages taking on the role of a god?
Ooh, I got close to something like that in my bow.
And how does that naturally fit within the psyche of human nature to accept something like that?
Oh, I think the second question is the easy one. Is there's people who just desire power. So it's pragmatic at that point. Then whatever I have to do to get me power or more and more and more power, I'm willing to do it. I met a guy who, not surprisingly, the time of his life he was talking to me about was when he was deeply into the occult. And he said, my goal was to take over a small country and rule with an iron fist. And, I looked at his wife and I said, well, I guess you got to have goals. Um, like that, something like that does not exist within me. You know what I mean? But at one point in his life, he said, that's what I wanted to do. That was my big goal. Wow. And so that if that's your goal, then what are you going to do to get there? You're definitely not going to be the most loving, charitable person on the planet. So we're kind of back to the Illuminati thing and the Faustian bargain is what are you going to do? Well, something appears to you and says, hey, I'll grant you all this power if you do this, right? Guess who did that? Satan to Jesus. This world is mine. I'll give it to you, all the kingdoms of the world, if you bow down and worship me, right? It's the same thing. It's always the same thing. Satan's game is always the same. And sadly, there's a famous saying that goes, Satan hasn't had an original thought in millennia. And the sad thing is he hasn't had to, because we always fall for the same thing. So I believe it was in my book on Satanology where I went through Ezekiel 31 and 28 and Isaiah 12 and text in Daniel where it talks about how there appears to be a spiritual sovereign behind the human sovereign. Sometimes one is called the prince, sometimes the king, sometimes the king is human, the prince is spiritual, or vice versa. That's not really what matters. Is that, for example, in Daniel, when it talks about the prince of Persia, well, that was definitely not a good old-fashioned human being, because you needed an angel Gabriel and then the archangel Michael helping him battle the prince of Persia. So that's not just some dude sitting around his kingdom on earth. That's something different. And so Michael is called the prince who is over the people of Daniel. And then you just kind of chase that down around the Bible. And I did a whole chapter just showing very explicitly how this is the message that's coming across, is that behind human sovereigns, there's a spiritual sovereign.
Isn't it strange though that we have I don't know, what do we have, 2-3 billion Christians, and yet here this small little group possibly controls the monetary unit, to a degree, and the government, maybe, who knows, I don't know, it's just weird.
Well, I mean, I see what you're saying, because even if you just parochially look at just the United States, right, traditionally a pretty traditional country, and yet who owns and runs virtually everything? The entertainment industry, the media, the alleged education systems,
Yeah, I mean, whether you believe in conspiracy theories or not, it's just weird that a small group of people controls, monopolies seem like they're getting bigger than they were maybe 20-30 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, and it's all left. It's all detrimental to any healthy measure of a society historically, and yet there they are, all ruling it all.
I think didn't oil really change a lot of things though too? You know what I mean? Because before everyone kind of had to do their own little like farming, for their own, provide for their own little family and homesteading. And then oil, you know, all of a sudden we have the capability to have machines make a lot of things for us and more manpower.
I love Little House on the Prairie.
Well, I tell you, the way things were not too long ago, it's literally, I can literally not even imagine what it was like. So I'll tell you a story my pastor told, my former pastor. He said that one time he asked his dad, why don't we lock the doors when we leave the house? Okay, and his dad says, well, what if the neighbor needs something? That's how it was. Why would you lock your door? Because if your neighbor needs something, they need to be able to just walk into your house and get it.
Wow.
Duh, why wouldn't you? That's how it was. Or, you know, something always strikes me in all these silly movies. Somebody needs a car, so they just get into the car and they flip down the sunblock, what is it called?
Visor.
The visor, and there fall the keys right into their hands. Well, but that's how people used to do it. Where else would you keep your keys but in your car? Duh, you'd never lose them. They're all right there all the time. Why would you keep them anywhere else?
Hmm.
That's how it was not too long ago. Imagine that. You leave your door unlocked, so your neighbor needs something, they come right into your house and get what they need.
So how escalated do you believe this change to be? Do you believe it to be exponential or just as a gradual slant?
I would think it's exponential. And, you know, I've never been one of these Hal Lindsey types where I'm reading the newspaper and then I got my Bible in the other hand. I've never been that kind of person, but just the way things have changed within the last couple of years, where things that a mere couple of years ago you would have said there's absolutely no way that's ever going to happen. Never, no way. That's absolutely insanity. You're crazy. You're a crazy conspiracy theorist if you believe anything like that. Guess what? Today, that's the reality.
I'm not sure, but I believe intuitively there's a pattern that when something grows exponentially, it eventually breaks.
Well, granted, it will break because everything we're talking about is deconstruction of God's creation. And that will definitely, whatever eschatological view you take, that's definitely going to come to end at some point. God will only put up with so much rebellion. But all of these things are, in fact, we just over dinner, at the end of our dinner tonight, we were talking about the first law of logic, the law of identity. A equals A, right? A is
Mhm.
A, period. Because that's the way God created the world, and that reflects God's thinking. Is something is what it is. Something is not what it is not, and it doesn't matter since that's an absolute, and it doesn't matter if you agree with it or not, if you like it or not, if you prefer it to be different or not. It doesn't matter. It's an absolute. A is A. And so the fact that we're living in a world that more and more says, no, A is whatever you want it to be. A doesn't equal A. A equals whatever I feel like it. Well, you can claim that all you want. It's still not true, but that's a fundamental rebellion against God's creation, is to say, well, A is A, that's verifiable. But we're going to rebel against that because we don't like it. So I can self-identify as whatever I want because A equals whatever I choose on any given day, of course. And the one example I gave them is I just watched a video with Todd Friel at a college campus, and he's asking a college student, you know, does 2 plus 2 only equal 4? And the college student is like, no, it can equal 7. He's like, how could 2 plus 2 equal 7? And the college student says, well, maybe there'll be another culture, and they decide to call a 4 a 7. Okay, but 4 is still 4, even if you call it 7. That's the problem. It's not about the words, right? It's about the identity. So if you have
They,
4 items, they'll be 4, even if you call them 7 or cucumber or chinchilla. It doesn't
What
matter.
they do is they introduce the hypothetical and then take the hypothetical as a reality.
Well, actually, one thing I got a kick out of is Lawrence Krauss made himself a shirt that said 2 + 2 = 5, given high values of 2. That so that's pretty clever, but still, it's not that 2 + 2 = 5. It just means that 2.5 plus 2.5.
Right, exactly.
But see, it's
The-
still, you're still not getting around it.
We had one of my gosh, would have been like ninth grade teachers. He taught Greek and Greek mythology and Lord of the Rings, things of that nature. And I remember when it always stood out to me when he said that, you know, he's like, you can call this desk a chair if you want, but it doesn't change what it is, you know.
Right.
You know, you can label it anything you want, but I don't know why that always stood out to me when he said that. You know,
Well, good.
never
I
heard
feel
anyone
better now.
That's Shakespearean. A rose of any other name would smell just as
It's
sweet.
that's right. That's right.
So these observations have been throughout, right?
Well, right. Anything that's true has been observed and described in one form or another.
What about so what do you think about the introduction of what's his name? Plato's analogy of the cave wall.
Yeah, you know what? I wrote a whole thing about that in one of my where I reviewed movies. I talk about that, the allegory of the cave being very much like when we go into a movie theater. Have you ever
I never
thought about
really
that?
considered that. I never
Yeah,
really considered that until tonight. Thank you.
yeah. It's pretty much the same thing. It's just modernized, right? So they're sitting around watching reflections on a wall made by puppeteers who are casting, the shadows are being cast by fire. We just happen to be staring at a screen from the light of a projector. It's the same.
Mhm.
And the thing is, the reality on the screen is it's at least eligible to have been propagandized enough so that you leave a movie and you start thinking differently about your real life or the world or relationships or whatever it is, right? In other words, we are not a culture that sits around fires discussing philosophy and ethics, but we do sit around the flickering flames of TV screens and movie screens, and we're fed the same things, philosophy and ethics. They definitely affect our worldviews, whether we want to admit it or whether we want to walk away saying something like, oh, it's just a movie. Oh, it's just a movie. Really? Do you have any idea the number of people who rack their brains sometimes for years thinking about storylines and plot points
Right.
and
I've had movies that I
writing?
watched that have
Right.
affected me for days.
I mean, they're writing these scripts, they're editing the scripts, they're discussing them, they're proposing them, they're being asked to make changes. So what you see on the screen took hundreds of people and hundreds of hours to do, and then you're just gonna, oh, it's just a movie. Really?
Was there entertainment in the Bible?
Oh, that is a good question.
I'm thinking maybe like David, you know, soothing King Solomon, maybe a little bit or something like that, maybe.
Well, so
Or I might have
then,
said that wrong, but
no, but I guess the question would be then, what is entertainment, right?
mhm.
So is it by necessity? Do we have to mean that it's something completely purposeless and mindless? Or was it David playing soothing music? Because then it has a definite purpose to it, right? But does that
Mhm.
mean that it's not entertainment just because it has the side effect of being soothing to somebody?
And then you
That's,
kind of had the bad entertainment where Salome is, dancing in front of
yeah, yeah.
Herod.
Bring the head of John the Baptist on a platter.
Hmm.
Yep, platter, platter, platter. Well, actually, now that you know, that's an interesting question about entertainment in the Bible because I was noticing a friend of mine had posted a article about how the CIA had been involved in encouraging things such as modern art, which basically trash, but you get to call yourself an artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, throw paint on the wall and call it
Exactly, right.
yeah.
And I was saying, well, um, okay, you guys have to forgive me for constantly referring to my books, but that's what happens when you've written enough of them.
That's
In one of
okay.
my books about Aleister Crowley, I talked about how, well, if you look at the art, and I mean in any format, right? Poetry, music, whatever it is, if you look at what's traditionally been considered the greatest art of all time, the artists themselves, the composer, the painter, whoever it was, would generally say, well, I did what I did to glorify God, right?
Mhm.
Whereas today, if you were to grab a random artist and ask them about art, they would talk about, oh, this is about deconstruction. It's about smashing down, it's tearing down, it's breaking down, it's rebellion, it's opposition. Well, where'd you
Or
get
it's,
that?
it's about me or something
I
like
mean,
that. Yeah.
you
Totally.
could do the same interpretation with a math problem. You don't need paint splashed on a wall. If you're going to be so subjective about, deconstructionism, rebellion, things like that, you could interpret the same thing with a math problem.
Like, what were you thinking? I can.
Well, I don't
Because
know. Yeah,
well,
go ahead.
there's something that's there, right? Whether it's paint on the wall or it's a math problem, and
Oh,
you're
I see. You're saying like break it down apart where it's
breaking
not a
it
math
down.
problem anymore.
Exactly.
Right. You could take like EM equals square or whatever, and then say EM1 A Z is now that's the true solution.
Mhm.
Hey, Troy.
But of course, the difference with math is that it is absolute.
Yeah, and then I'm starting to see so many theories and what they hypothesize could be possible, and then they're accepting that as possible. I think there's a subjective spirit that's been introduced into mathematics recently.
Right.
That's interesting. You said talking to somebody the other day about multiverse theory and how I
Mhm.
once I was talking to, well, I got to ask a question at a lecture by a cosmologist, and I told him, when cosmology, it seems like I'm reading mathematics and philosophy. And he said, well, that's what it is. It's mathematics and philosophy, exactly. It's not like astronomy where you've got your eyeball up to a telescope and you're observing what you see. It's a whole different ballgame.
Right, it becomes metaphysics instead of
Right. And that's why you end up with all these problems in cosmology about models. Well, my model says this. Okay, but then the test is, does your model really meet reality?
and then if you really look at the history of the succession of the models, you realize a lot of it was from politics, and not really from the most logical stance.
Right. And,
And
well,
a lot of
again,
people
because
don't know the history of science in that way.
it's mathematics, but it's also philosophy. So it could be political philosophy or it could be theological philosophy,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
my degree is in the philosophy of biology.
So do you sit around going like, wow, man, does the organism survive because it's the fittest, or is it the fittest because it survives? I need to go on sabbatical.
Right.
Pulling your leg.
I thought I was just studying science,
Oh, yeah.
studying A equals A. And then when I got my diploma, it's like the philosophy of biology.
It's funny because y'all don't even realize y'all talking about chiastic structures the entire time. Like I'm hearing you and like you're talking A to A, B to B, like
Well,
everything you're
maybe
saying.
that's a natural pattern even in conversation of a chiasmic structure.
Oh,
I don't know.
I love going on rivers with a kayak. Yeah, no problem.
You got to go to the three rivers though.
Where the three rivers meet.
Right.
Yeah, well, that would be a bad thing. It's like, wait, hold on. What do you mean by three rivers meet? Like, there's three choices where I get to choose, like left, right, or center, or like I came from the center and it's either left or right. That's three still.
Well, you know what they say: if you come to a fork in the road, take it.
A fork in the road? Yeah, I would pick the fork up too, because I'd be like, this is probably made of silver.
Yep. Or here's a question posed by, you guys know the comedian Stephen Wright? If you ever want to die laughing a
Sure.
few times, look him up. He says, what if you're traveling at the speed of light and you turn on your
You turn on your what?
headlights?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
see, I wonder that too, because the light would actually technically be going faster than the speed of light, because like, you just
I've
broke
heard
the
that
whole
one
thing.
before. Yeah, yeah.
You broke the universe now.
Yeah.
Well, you know, every time they tested the speed of light, they got a different measurement. And so then finally, a group of guys got together and they say, no, we're going to make it this measurement, and we're forbidding you to test the speed of light from now on. It's this, and this is what it's going to be.
And that's the issue in what they call scientific revolutions, is things become dogma. And then most of the scientists that we call the greatest scientist ever are generally called the greatest scientist ever because they went against the dogma,
Right. They
the
did.
scientific dogma, and then they broke apart from it, and putting up with ridicule and persecution, and finally, eventually, having other scientists go, hey, oh
And
yeah,
if you believe in the cosmological theory as it's expressed today, and you understand red shifting and how everything is moving away from us because of the red shift, there's a guy that came along named ARP, and he made some very logical observations of there's something else that could be causing you to be viewing these red shifts, and that's plasma clouds. And they just completely shut him down. They won't even discuss. And you would think that if you aren't aware of how the scientific community operates, then you would think, well, if somebody has a logical alternative explanation, then that should be explored. And that's not the way it is. They're completely shut down.
That Stephen Wright's got some funny stuff.
oh yeah. Like he asked, what happens if you scare someone half to death twice?
Well, then they'd be a fourth of life, right? Because
I mean, a bunch of these are good. It was like I was reading I was reading the dictionary. I thought it was a poem about everything. And I mean, sponges grow in the ocean. That just kills me. I wonder how much deeper the ocean would be if that didn't happen.
Like, what? Where are you finding these? The bottom of the ocean again. Okay.
On the other hand, you have different fingers.
That is just. You find the most ridiculous jokes.
I love
Yeah.
humor like that, but what
Yeah.
I can't stand is within the last 100 years, the cruel humor.
Oh
And it's
yeah.
gotten worse and worse. I mean, used to it would be a celebration of stupidity when you had I Love Lucy and things like that. But now you've got Friends or Golden Girls where these people are supposed to be close together and they're completely just always badgering one another and complaining and criticizing one another.
And
And
you know that
I see that as humor.
that was one of the brilliant things about the very last episode of Seinfeld is they
Yeah.
basically went through the whole entire length of every single series and showed you how horrendously bad these people were.
Hmm.
They're horrible, horrible people.
Hmm.
That's
No,
When
also,
I
that's
was
so funny that you
that's
mentioned that,
also an
because
exponential scale.
I'm just saying, just the other day, it's the weirdest thing. Like, there was a customer in the shop. I was in the middle of delivering pizzas. Like, I'm just a delivery driver, but I'm just waiting for the next delivery, which is about to come out. But this guy he makes it a point to specifically turn around and talk to me, and he's like, "So you don't watch Seinfeld, right?" Like, he says this to me. Now
Really?
you're mentioning Seinfeld. Like, what the
Wow.
frig? Who was that guy? Like, why is he mentioning? He
Yeah.
made it a point.
I
Like,
never, ever watched that show and God willing, I never ever will.
Well, I mean, I wrote an article about the philosophy of the show Seinfeld, particularly because from what I was told is he claimed that they purposefully did not write any morals into the show, right? So
I
my
can see
point,
that.
well, but that's impossible, really.
It is.
That's one of my philosophical points. It is impossible because even if you set out to purposefully not write any morals into it, then guess what? That's a moral right there. You might call it nihilism, but it is because you're purposefully setting out to philosophically insert that into your show, right? And it was known as the show about what? Nothing. Well, nothing is nihil. That's the whole point. Is if you watch the show, the main characters did not believe in God. So what do they have? They just have the little petty things going on in their daily lives to keep them going for one more day. And whether that meant, you know, being involved in tons of relationships or just um, the way that the Elaine character put it once is pouring over the excruciating minutia of every single daily event. It's like, well, but they had to do that because they had nothing else. They had no greater purpose. They had nothing else beyond that. So that's the whole philosophy is what happens when people are truly nihilistic. Well, that's what they turn into is just a bunch of horrible people causing a bunch of problems. And
You know, the letter of Albert Pike actually addresses that about atheism.
mm, I haven't looked at that in a very, very
But
long
what's
time.
interesting is he's Jewish,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, how is that interesting?
Well, because he's an atheist, but he's Jewish. He always brings up his Jewish faith in the show. Seinfeld himself.
Yeah, I didn't know he claimed to be an atheist, which doesn't surprise me. There's
In the
tons of
show or
secular.
real life?
He's in both
Oh, okay.
because it's supposed to take after his real life.
Yeah, I didn't realize in real life he claimed to be an atheist, but I mean, it wouldn't
Well, he
surprise
does in
me.
the show.
Oof. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, on the show, one time George says, um, God will never allow this. God will never let me be happy. And Jerry tells him, I thought
hmm
you didn't believe in God. And he says, I do for the bad things.
hmm
Mm.
So if you're going to talk about that, how come you're not talking about Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Because I think
It's
I've only
another
seen
show.
like half an episode of that ever. But
That's
It
another
might
show
as
and
well be
thing
the
that I
same
never
difference.
watched.
Same difference. I mean, it's the mirror. It's like, there you go. There's the mirror stuff again.
right. And I mean,
Or
basically, I never understood why it was so big deal that it was a show about nothing, because pretty much every sitcom is about nothing. It's just about daily life, you know.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Now the modern version of that Seinfeld concept is the Big Bang Theory. It's the same basic concept.
another
Oh
show
my
I never
gosh.
watched.
Well, you're lucky if you've never watched, because, like, don't do it.
Well, I mean, I watched it when it first started out, a few episodes till I go, okay, I got it now. I see exactly what they're doing, and that's it. I don't need to view it anymore. But yeah, that's what it was. It was here's a bunch of young, smart, hotshot atheists, and so what are they spending their lives doing? Well, I guess when you're that smart, you spend most of your time being childish and trying to get a lot of people into your bed. Let me put it that
Now,
way.
back in the 90s, I remember I was watching, and I would watch it all the time, like Xena Warrior Princess or Hercules or
Yes.
Beastmaster and these things, because they did tend to have an underlying beneficial philosophy that they would introduce of doing the right thing. But I don't see that at all anymore.
Right. Yeah. About indulgence now.
Voyeurism.
Yeah. Hedonism, voyeurism. You're voyeuring hedonism.
That makes me think of another joke on here. It says, I installed a skylight. My neighbors are furious. Or something like, maybe I read that wrong.
Oh God,
But
he's got
my
endless.
upstairs neighbors are furious. It said, yeah,
Oh, that yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he
He's got
says.
some great ones.
Yeah, I cleaned my dog with spot remover. Haven't seen him since.
I like
And you
this
know,
one. I'll read one last one. My roommate got a pet elephant. Then it got lost. It's in the apartment somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Oh.
It's right here between us. That's where the elephant is.
the elephant in the room.
Nobody can see it though because it's invisible, even though it's gigantic.
And the thing about Stephen Wright is, his stuff is very clever and very funny, but he is known for deadpan. So like his audience is dying laughing, just dying, and he's just
Right. He's
total
like,
deadpan.
right. Yeah. His delivery is classic.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen him in a long time.
No, me either. One time, I was at work and my buddy called me and he started reading me some of these. I almost hurt myself trying not to laugh out loud,
Right.
I mean, I almost burst a vein in my neck trying. I was like, no, stop. It's so funny. Yeah, I was dying. Yep.
I like the linguistic jokes, and it sounds
Yes.
like he sounds like a little bit like George Carlin when he was talking about how we park on driveways and drive
Right.
on parkways.
Yeah, he says, why buy shampoo? Go for the real poo.
Didn't you hear the new the commercial? I think it was for like Geico or some one of those, but it was like you like shampoo. You put that in your hair. Like, do you guys break that word? I'm like, sham
Yeah.
means a hoax, and poo. Why would you
Yeah.
want that in your hair?
I've also studied the progression of commercials, and I remember back, if you can see some of these old commercials, they're actually trying to sell you a product and trying to convince you of its efficacy. And now it's just meaningless symbols, and it has nothing to do with the product at all.
Oh, you know how many times we'll be watching TV at home and we play a game where you try to guess what the commercial's about. What's this about? Pants? No brakes. No, what is it? Shampoo? No, what is it? A medicine? Whatever. It's a big
I
joke,
remember playing
Some of
that
these
game. Yeah.
medicine commercials are fantastically funny because they will say in the sweetest possible gentle voice,
Yeah.
"Oh, and by the way, this can cause death,
Yeah.
liver failure, or kidney failure."
Right. And the scenery is all like our nature, and they're walking in a park. It's so peaceful, and they're talking about the most horrendously violent reactions you could imagine.
It's kind of like
Yeah.
the Bible says, calling evil good and good
Oh
evil.
yeah. It's like, oh, I'm feeling so much better now that I'm taking that drug, I'm bleeding out from my ears. I'm psychotic.
I know so well.
I can't control my bowels, but I feel so much better.
Do you believe there's going to be a future quasi mass extinction of humankind? Like the Georgia Guidestones are basically kind of hinting at?
If I did, I would say grab your newspaper today. You know what I mean?
I mean, like as a path we're heading on, not anything specific, of, oh, well, this is it or this is it, but the way we're talking about, you know, big pharma, the
Right.
military industrial complex, and all these things getting more and more powerful, and just these trends to recognize patterns, then, I'm wondering if you might think there is some, because, if you studied, there's several Native American religions that believe in these great harvests that take place, and that there's this fifth great harvest that's soon to come about us. And then there was another guy that was showing in Hollywood how the number 5 has always been so significant lately, you know, and so we're coming up on that age of Aquarius, I think, or something. So there's, you know, there's these like huge harvests throughout history where mass populations die and then we start over again.
I hadn't heard about the number 5 in movies thing. That'd be interesting to look
Yeah,
at.
they even had a movie called V, you know.
Yeah,
I remember that, the show
yeah,
V
the
or
show,
whatever.
yeah. Now, I tell you what was interesting. You know, not long ago, they made a reboot of that TV show. It didn't last very long, but right before the show was canceled, what the aliens were working on is a machine that human soul from the body.
It was a machine that did what?
It removed the human soul from the body.
Weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if
So,
they could do that, what would that mean for people?
Well, if
Like,
you,
what if they could actually do that?
well, your soul would say, I ain't got no body. I'm so lonely. I ain't got nobody. I ain't got nobody. Nobody. Yeah.
but like you said earlier about, let me just pick like these spiritual um, entities that act as your mediums and stuff, how they're so interested in our physical reality. That must mean that their spiritual reality is just a piece of crap because they're more interested in our reality than theirs.
See, one thing I always think about is, to me, a fundamental non sequitur. So we're supposed to think that just because these aliens have high tech, they therefore have high spirituality or some kind of deeper theology. Why should we think that? It'd be like
Especially if we see the pattern here on Earth, the higher technologically that we get, the worse we seem to be.
yeah, I mean, if our astronauts were to land on a inhabited planet, right? Does just the fact that they're good at engineering mean that they would be qualified to speak to the theology? Which actually, interestingly enough, that was an aspect of Carl Sagan's novel and movie Cosmo Contact, right?
How did he approach that? What did he think about that?
Well, the issue became that the person who was most technologically qualified to be the one to meet the aliens turned out to be an atheist. So then it was brought up that she is therefore not qualified to represent humanity. See, that was a very, very interesting point from my point of view is, well, that's right. I mean, you can't just say because I know how to, just because I'm an engineer or a scientist or whatever, therefore that makes me an expert in all things. And actually, that's the big problem that we have today with many people, like whoever it might be, Dawkins or
No,
Krauss
I
or
agree.
anybody else,
They say,
right?
Yeah.
such and such is an expert. We need to get the experts. But it's like, so what you're telling me is your guy, the expert, he knows every single last little possible detail about everything possible to know about that topic.
I mean, they
It's like,
might be an
no,
expert
obviously
in
they don't.
right. They
I
might
would
be an
call them
expert.
experts. I would, because they're not excellent. I would call them specialists.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah,
Yeah, that's more better term. Totally.
Champerts. What about Champerts?
The guy with some know-how. Get him.
Yeah, birds instead of shepherds. That's funny.
Yeah. Well, no, I was thinking shampoo and
I was
Champerts.
thinking like sham, like you
Yeah.
know, like a sham, you know.
You're thinking the ShamWow guy.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
I would hope there's no more. It's supposed to make it disappear.
Here's how to order.
If it's a psychic network, why do they need a phone number? Robin Williams.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Stephen Wright made an appearance on that TV show Becker once, and he's sitting at the counter at the coffee shop watching water dripping into a cup from the roof, from the ceiling. And so the waitress tells him, "Yeah, we got a leak on the ceiling." And he says, "Oh, good thing that cup was there." Or he's at the doctor's and tells the doctor, "Do you see someone sitting in the corner over there?" The doctor says, "No." And he says, "Good.
Gosh.
All right." Yeah. Yep. That was actually another point they made on Seinfeld is I like jokes you don't have to think about. That was their big thing. It's the reason why somebody made for TV from their comedy is because of that. I like stuff you don't have to think about.
Yeah, I
But
saw him though.
yeah, there's something to be said for the stuff you have to think about a minute.
I've
Right.
always liked
Sure.
I've always liked the phrase that Morpheus said. I think it was in the second movie or something, where he's being criticized for his belief in these prophecies, and he says, "Well, my belief does not require you to believe," or something like that.
Right. When Sandy posted that thing about the I don't know, the patent that the Microsoft had supposedly or did apply for, where it could use you to be generating as a miner for cryptocurrency. It made me think right away of the Matrix, where we're just batteries generating energy.
You know, those movies are filled with philosophical themes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, you know what's funny? You guys are talking about Matrix. You know, red pill, blue pill. Remember that whole thing?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
which
know,
pill? Which?
well, no. See, I just heard it recently. I'm not sure if it's true, but I'm assuming it's true. But Elon, our buddy Elon over at Tesla, he apparently tweeted out just recently, like, take the red pill. So,
Oh.
I think maybe he might be on the good side. I don't know. Just-
He stated a lot of things that, like he talked about. He made a statement which was that with artificial intelligence we're summoning a demon. That's exactly what he said.
I
oh,
remember him saying something like
well,
that.
of course, I would say the same thing. It's called, like, you know, like, I'm not saying like there's actual, like, his name is like whatever. Beelzebub, we're gonna summon Beelzebub out from the fly lord pit. Like, no, he's saying the AI is a demon. Like, you want the very definition of what a demon is. Like, there you go. Like, your AI, which is
Yeah, because he was pointing out that is you have the magician summoning the demon and it thinks it's going to have control over it, but inevitably it always gets turned around.
I'll put
exactly.
this.
The great deception, yeah.
I'll put this video I watched at Tesla, or not Tesla, but I guess it's Tesla, or what's his name? The in the future category on there, but it's a pretty darn interesting about Tesla, and a question Joe Rogan asked him, and Elon Musk just like went quiet when he asked him. He's like, didn't know what to say. So I'll put it in the future category. It's pretty interesting watch.
But you know, the red and blue pill thing, that actually was borrowed or stolen by the Matrix movie. It was first in Total Recall.
Was it in Total Recall? With,
Yeah, absolutely. Where Arnold, he's in the
right. I remember
virtual
Arnold.
world. Yeah, And then the guy shows up and it's exactly the same thing. If you take the red pill, then you wake up to your reality. If you take the blue one, then you stay in here. Yeah.
I knew there was a reason I liked that movie.
Although when they remade that movie, that scene did not make it. That scene was not in there anymore.
Because that's the remake. We don't watch remakes. Remakes
Okay,
are
so I have that remake recorded on my DVR, but I haven't watched it yet.
Mm.
Is there anything I should be looking for?
You know what? I remember watching it years ago and just thinking, I'm not sure why they bothered remaking it, you know. It just wasn't worth it in my mind.
I tend to now
The
look
remake.
for. I
Yeah.
like to look for Masonic symbolism in the movies, and underlying themes that are very, very subtle and things like that. Versus
Yeah.
really, because there's no plot anymore, really. Not
Yeah.
not in the modern ones for sure.
I mean, I've written 3 books about movies and never bother with acting and scenery and cinematography. I could care less about that stuff. To me, it's always about the worldview, always what's behind what you're seeing, right?
Wait, do you know what those 3 books are? I don't have those 3 books. I don't think.
What?
I don't think I
Oh,
have those.
man.
Which 3 are those called?
How could you not own my whole catalog?
Well, it's close. I have a good portion. A nice
Yeah,
chunk.
you do actually. You do. Let's see. They are Transhuman Hollywood, from normative fiction to predictive programming. And that's a book where I review, I don't even know how many movies, 30. Transhumanist themes in movies, right?
Wow.
Transhuman Hollywood, yeah.
You wrote that
Definitely
one.
seems we are going transhuman, aren't
Yeah.
we?
Yep.
There's an ecumenical council that there's this one priest, Lazar. He's on it. He's an
Yep.
Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, and it's a whole bunch of like spiritual leaders, and they're talking about this transhumanism thing.
Yep. Then
Isn't
there's
our
one,
phone-
sorry?
Oh, I was saying, isn't our phone kind of just
Yeah, definitely.
a stepping stone?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, in that book, it begins with a long, long discussion and explanation about what transhumanism is. And then only after all of that do I actually talk about movies. Then another book is called A Worldview Review of the Alien and Predator Mythos franchises.
I definitely don't have that one.
Yeah, that one is what, maybe that whole franchise was maybe 13 movies. So it was
What was the franchise now again?
Alien and also Predator.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah,
There's crossover ones too.
right.
Then
Requiem.
the third movie related book is A Worldview Review of Stephen King's It, the mystical, mysterious, and metaphysical in the novel, miniseries, and movies.
I do not like scary clowns.
Of course, that's why he chose it. That's exactly the purpose.
And that guy on CNN, the little bald guy, I can't help looking at him, and he looks to me like a scary clown.
Who,
Without makeup.
Brian,
Stelter, whatever. Skeleton. Yeah, right. He terrifies me. I mean, if he puts scary clown makeup on, I wouldn't be able to sleep that night. Which kind of also, okay, so what about the theme that you hear about the wise fool, the sophomore? Have you dived into that theme at all?
Wise fool.
Sophomore, is that kind of just like right in the middle then, basically, or what?
That's the first card of the tarot deck.
Ooh.
And that's what sophomore means, is wise fool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In the book about the movie It, I did talk about the background of clowns a little bit. I didn't talk about that tarot card or the fool, but you have very, very ancient concepts of the trickster, right?
Right.
The trickster spirits, and then obviously
Fairies.
jesters and jokers, right?
Right.
Like the Batman Joker. That's been a very big theme in our culture lately, and that's why it's kind of like the idiot savant, right?
It's funny, we've got a president who's named Trump, like the Trump card, which is a joker.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all part of it. Is the concept of a clown is where you're looking at this person, you know it's a person, you know it's just a disguise and makeup and all that. And that's what's part of what's so disturbing about it. You know you're looking at a front. You know you're looking at a facade. You know you're looking at something that's not the real thing. That's part of, I think, what's so disturbing about it. Then I also threw into that book a little bit about John Wayne Gacy, you know, the serial murderer who would dress up as a clown and have, you know, do his clown act and all fun and games, and well, it
Yeah, the
didn't end
dude
up
was
so well.
definitely super evil. I know
I
all
didn't know
about
his
him.
name, but I did know there was
Yeah,
something out there.
yeah. But actually, the it story is extremely esoteric and occult, no question about it. Man, he's got so many elements in there; it's almost hard to keep track of. I did a discussion online with Jason Horsley, and he began with a very deep discussion about all kinds of philosophical and occult issues. And then finally, when we got to talking about my book, I said, guess what? Everything we've just been talking about, it's in there. All of it. All of it. It's amazing how much Stephen King jam-packed into that novel. Well, actually, not okay. See, you know, it's interesting. All these discussions we have, they tend to go in circles, which is kind of good because it's like we're talking, even if we don't realize it, we're speaking in immediate and greater context. It all kind of goes back. So I was thinking about the it story, and then, well, wait a minute. When it comes down to it, it is an alien. It comes from elsewhere, right? And it crash lands on Earth. And so when you think about it, every single story about quote unquote aliens is really an aspect of what Jesus said, which is, I saw Satan fall to earth as lightning. I mean, inevitably, every single alien story is about some foreign being crash landing on Earth and bringing along with it proposed change in our worldview.
E.T., remember that one?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, just a year or two ago, they did an ET commercial, you know, with the guy that played Elliot. He's an adult now, and
Uh-huh.
ET comes, and it was a commercial for what was it, like insurance or just something mundane. But the storyline was interesting because ET comes and Elliot is introducing him to his kids now. And ET is showing an holographic image of that he also has kids. So it's ET and his wife and their kid. But it's around Christmas time. And then it's like, well, okay, I'm going away now, but I'm gonna, you know, this was ET's second coming. And what he's showing during Christmas time is kind of like, forget Mary, Joseph, and Jesus in the manger. Look at ET, me and my wife and my kid. We're replacing that now.
Right. I did see a comparison between E.T. and Christ, and it was disturbing.
Yeah, yeah.
You really have to see what Domitian did. Domitian, you got anything? Any books on Domitian, the Roman emperor? He's a very hard fella to get some accurate facts on. So I mean, that's
I
maybe an
don't
idea.
know. You know what I was thinking today is I
Maybe
really
an
need,
idea for another book.
no, not that, but I do need to do some spring cleaning. So if you know anybody who wants to buy 4,000 books from me, I'd be more than glad to give them a good deal.
Well, all the people that are capable of hearing this depends on which kind of 4,000 books you're trying to upload.
Oh, they're all like theology or comparative religion or something to do with religion, all of them. See, I used to have a home office, right? And then
How
we
much you
kept
work?
somehow we kept having children. I don't know how, but then my office became one of the kids' rooms, and my books went to the garage. And well, now we're living in such a digital world. I don't exactly need 4,000 books. Although I would love it if I could have wall-to-wall bookshelves in my house, but that doesn't seem to be happening. So,
You're saying most of your sales in your books are actually not physical copies, like I would prefer.
well, I mean, no, the books I write is a different story. I'm talking about books that I use for research or whatever that I really need to get rid of. I don't know, just
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
you're trying
No,
to
no.
you're trying to get rid of the ones that we originally purchased for the research.
Well, I mean, that's a handful. I'm talking about like literally about 4,000 books that I've collected over the years to do my research.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
was that you
look,
that
dude.
I looked at the things that you post and the one of the elongated 6-inch skeleton, and I started looking at some of the explanations that people were giving, and they were like, yeah, it's definitely human, but there's so many unknowns and that. But then there was the one with wings, and what is
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, that is the one that basically there's a very famous Mexican TV show host who's very much into ufology and conspiracies and all that stuff. Okay, so he told L.A. Marzulli, get yourself over to Mexico. I got something to show you. So then when he showed up, that's what he showed Marzulli is, look, there's this, entity, this being, whatever it is, this 8-inch tall fairy gnome creature looking thing. And well, in the end, it turns out that it's just a hoax. It's like a puppet, that's all it is. Somebody just put that together and nothing came of it except for, Marzulli likening it to, oh, right away, I thought of Revelation chapter 9. It's like, dude, that has nothing to do with nothing.
Right.
And then I don't know. I guess he exposed a hoax, so he got to make a video out of it, which was actually pretty interesting to watch. The way that these things happen. But yeah, that's what it was. Is it turned out to be a hoax, but and who knows who originally perpetrated it? But
So when you approach a new uh, subject of or new piece of evidence, do you immediately like default to is this a hoax and let me try to prove otherwise, or how do you what is your default position when you first approach something like that?
ooh, that is an interesting question because, okay, let me give you a for instance, and then I'll kind of hit that more head on. So, for instance, when you look at the issue of Nephilim, um, people generally go in extremes, right? It's either has nothing to do with anything paranormal, it's just human beings, and the other extreme is you're off into sci-fi theology land, right? You're off into just the wildest stuff you could ever imagine, and that only solidifies the extremes because then the people who think that there's nothing really to it are all the more convinced because they don't want anything to do with being seen to be in the camp of the really popular teachers on the other side who are extremely well known in certain circles, but they're, in my estimation, they're doing theological sci-fi. There's really no other way for me to.
Fan fiction.
I mean, I'm actually editing my book as we speak. That's about those guys and what they're doing. And so, and then conversely, the guys that are doing the theological sci-fi, they don't want to be viewed as being in the camp of the ones that say there's nothing really to it. Those guys are blind. Boy, they don't see what we see. They don't know what we know. If they only knew. And and so I have kind of been forced to begin with a skeptical view, which actually is just part of my nature, I must admit. I'm pretty sure I've told this story before because I've been asked before about how I got saved. And one story I tend to tell is that when I was, I don't know what age I was, but in my single digits for sure. So, you know what I mean? Before the age of 10, when I found out that, well, where I was born, we didn't have the tooth fairy. We had the teeth mice.
Oh.
The same thing. It's just we got the knockoff, I guess. So when I was younger than 10, finding out that, oh wait, there's no such thing as a teeth mice. It's just my parents doing it. And I can honestly say that I trace my being a skeptic to that moment of just recognizing, well, wait a minute. I was told something is true, and now I find that it's not true. And by the people who I'm supposed to trust the most,
Right.
they were being malicious, but still, in my mind, it was like, wait a minute, these people, I'm relying on them for everything, including my view of reality. And I'm not even claiming I thought about it in those terms back then, but I knew something was definitely earth shattering at that moment.
It's
So,
kind of like the parent looks at childhood as a special time where you can believe things that are not existent versus looking at childhood where you're seeing things for the first time. You're experiencing life and what comes from that.
in fact, get yourself over to YouTube and look up Santa syndrome. Someone made a bunch of really interesting videos about how atheists, many of them, claim exactly the same sort of thing that I just stated, which is, oh, when I was a kid, I believed in Santa because my parents told me, and then I found out it wasn't true, and then I thought, what else are they lying to me about? And then, well, then God doesn't exist either. That sort of stuff. I could really relate to that.
Yeah, I think I was around 11 and I snuck downstairs Christmas Eve to see if there was going to be a Santa Claus or not.
Yeah.
And the floor creaked. And so my father, he discovered me and I became the villain. I was the one that ruined Christmas.
Oh, wow. So that's doubly psychological there.
Yeah.
You ruined Christmas. Well, so for us, our kids have always known that mom and dad are the ones who put the present out. They've known that from day one. You know, to us, don't focus on Santa, focus on Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But so anyhow, all that to say, when I say skeptic, I deal with a lot of atheists who call themselves skeptics, but they're really cynics, which to me is extremely different. So like a skeptic would say, I will not believe until, where a cynic would say, I will not believe, period. Right. So I think of myself as a skeptic still to this day, but a true and honest one, not one that's just about denial, 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 denial. I don't want to hear it. And it's not more
Because,
like Thomas, right? The Apostle Thomas.
yeah,
Well, you other apostles are claiming you saw something. I want to see it too. Well, sure, why not?
it seems like skepticism has an aura of pessimism around it.
Yeah. And that's generally why, because pessimists and skeptics are calling themselves, I mean, pessimists and cynics are calling themselves skeptics when they're really not.
Kind of like if it's too good to be true, then it's probably a lie. And I had a history teacher that was telling me the word fantastic means too good to be true. So if you're saying something is fantastic, you're actually calling someone a liar.
Wow. Interesting.
But it's also like, like fan, like you're a fan of something, but it's like tastic, whatever that means. But it's like blown out of proportion.
Well, phantasma is Greek.
Well,
Phantasmagoria.
phantasm means, it's like an invisible dude, right?
Yeah. So did you study the occult by chance? Like the Necronomicon and Cthulhu and all those guys?
I don't know if that's a can of worms right there.
I think there's some of those characters in one of these books I have here. Which one is it?
Well, no, I mean I wrote a series called the Necronomicon.
I don't have that one.
No, it's a series, and it doesn't really focus on that stuff though. But I guess I've only researched it to the point of trying to understand what those people are saying and doing.
Did you by chance go back into the history? Did you see something like similar deities from Babylon or something like that? Did you look at the history at all, or were you just trying to understand what they see today?
Oh, okay, going full circle again. What's interesting is,
I'm kind of circular. Yeah.
no, in my 50 Shades of Grey Alien book, I quoted extensively from what they call a Christian ufologist, the late Byron LeBeau. And one thing he talked about is how often in supposed alien contact, the names come up of ancient gods and goddesses and demons. So, for instance, in the Billy Meyer supposed alien contact case,
Yep.
you know what I'm talking about. He's dealing with alien called Samyaza, and well, guess what? That's right out of the Book of Enoch,
Hmm.
Ethiopic Enoch. So that happens a lot, right? Like Ishtar and Ashtar command. That stuff is, again, you cannot separate ufology or alienology from the occult. It's just, they're always hand in hand. It just never fails.
Yeah. Stargate, the movie Stargate
Yeah,
series, Stargate SG-1 plays heavily into that.
yeah. In fact, they did a documentary. The people who did Stargate did a documentary showing where they got their concepts from in ancient mythology. They're very open about that, of course. There's no way to get around what they were talking about. Or even Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek Deep Space Nine. That comes directly out of um, supposed alien contact in real life.
Hmm.
9.
You know, in the original series, I didn't believe it until I actually saw it. There's a clip on YouTube, and they were experiencing another Earth or something, and basically, it's the black lady,
Uhura, is it?
Hulu, or what is it?
It's Uhura. If
Yeah,
I remember correct.
she was talking to Captain Kirk, and they were talking about how, well, Christ is the Son of God and stuff. And I couldn't believe that they actually had put that
Really?
there. Yeah, I wouldn't have believed it unless I actually saw it.
Huh.
So,
Interesting. Wow. I wonder why. I wonder what came out of that, or why that,
I
what
don't know.
meant.
Um,
Yeah.
but I've always liked the concept of the Stargate universe, or that we could go all these different places and meet all these different things and everything. But I tend to not really buy into the cosmological theories that are out today. For instance, when I was in astronomy, there were two views. There were the Big Bang theory and the steady state theory.
Oops, sorry guys.
Oh, now we're gonna get a copyright strike. Ah, I'm just
It's a
kidding.
musical interlude.
And the steady state theory was that it always exists. There was no beginning to it. It just goes on and on. And to me, that seemed actually more logical than ex nihilo, something that come from nothing. And then I
Yeah.
started thinking of early man. Okay, so if early man, he sees trees, and his father saw trees, and his grandfather saw trees, it's unnatural for that man to say, well, when were there no trees? Because trees were always here.
Mm. It's interesting. Just this week, I was having an ongoing discussion with an atheist, and he is denying that the universe had a beginning. He's holding to the steady state theory. And I'm like, dude, do you have
Well,
any idea how out of date you are with the latest science on that?
well, I
Frankly,
mean, yeah, but that. All right, you have found a logical atheist. So, they're very rare.
well, even though he has no premise upon which to be logical, he's borrowing from our worldview
Yeah,
to
he
do
is,
that.
he's borrowing it, but he's at least, being more, not a mouthpiece of completely something illogical. He's trying to work it out himself. So
Yeah.
there is a sincerity within his atheism, and I don't think you find that very often.
And I can't blame him for it because there's not a lot of options on the table for him. So, yeah, to claim the steady state theory makes sense. I mean, I could see that. Although, the reason why he opted for that is actually because of a mistaken under, misunderstanding of the first law of thermodynamics. He was claiming that energy, matter cannot be created or destroyed. Therefore, there's no way that there could be a beginning to the universe, which doesn't make, well, the reason I'm saying he was misunderstanding it is because he is neglecting the portion of that which has to do with a closed system, right? That's only true within the box.
Mhm.
It's only true within the universe. You can't apply that to cosmogony. You can't apply it to the beginning of the universe. That's only once the universe is here and it's a closed system. If you want me to take a step farther, what I told him is it's too bad because you missed a scientific prediction in the Bible because it talks about how God's creating, day one, God's creating, day two, God's creating, all the way to 6. And then what? Well, he ceased from creating. There you go. There's a limited amount of energy and matter. No more is being produced. It's just changing. It's changing, but it's not, no more is being created after God stopped creating. There you go. That's the scientific prediction of the first law of thermodynamics in Genesis. It's right there.
I would always explore when I was talking with atheists, their concept, and most atheists believe in free will, and that goes completely against the law of thermodynamics, the second one. Um, Everything has a pathway, and even if it's your brain wave patterns, the electrical symbols and impulses are on pathways, so you're doing everything, and there is no way that it could have a path where it could choose left or right. It can only choose one. And so most atheists are not deterministic, but I think that a few that are somewhat more logical, I think that's where you would have to follow through, is being deterministic in everything, because they want to use determinism when it suits them, but then they want to, play around with free will and
Right.
multiverse and, string theory and all this other stuff too.
I agree because sometimes I'll tell them, look, according to you, what I call my thoughts are just my interpretation of random biochemical neural reactions occurring in my gray matter, right?
Hmm.
How are you then expecting me to somehow change my biochemical reactions so that I now will believe atheism like you do? How am I supposed to do that?
Right. And they'll say, I don't believe in God because there's no proof, but oh, I believe in free will. Oh, but yet there's no proof.
Because if we're just biochemical entities, if we're animated matter, then our biology, our biochemistry is forced to act in accordance to the laws of thermodynamics. So then
Exactly.
where's your choice, right?
Exactly.
Huh.
And that's disturbing to them.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of the avenues that I use when I speak with atheists.
I've definitely noticed that. And I mean, I can tell you this has happened, oh, I don't know, about a million times. Anytime I try to get them to really think about their own worldview, that's usually where when they call me a bunch of naughty names and run off. Yeah. When they see that their worldview is really a bottomless pit of assertions, that's when they're
Yeah.
pretty much done. They do
Right.
not go there.
Because you've shown them they had no foundation.
Exactly. Sad. Sometimes I tell them, look, your worldview tells you that you're just an accidentally and temporarily existing ape. And so that's why you're acting that way. It's a shame that's why you behave the way you behave, because you actually believe that. And then it becomes doubly absurd, right? Because if theism, as Freud speculated, if theism really came about as some sort of Darwinian survival mechanism, then I'll ask atheists, well, who are you to purposely seek to damage my ability to survive? Why are you trying to get me to change my mind? If this is my survival mechanism, who are you to come along and attempt to get me to stop believing it?
Steven Pinker sort of parrots that idea that hope keeps us going, and even though he's an atheist, he admires the hope of theologians.
And then Alvin Planting talked about how, um, okay, so for some, on an atheistic point of view, for some unknown reason, life seeks to survive, right? Survival is like the number one game in town. But of course, nobody knows why, if on atheism or evolution. It's
Mhm.
just another accident, an unplanned accident, right? So Plantinga talks about how, well, um, I could survive by ascertaining empirical truth, but I could also survive by being completely deluded, and it really doesn't matter. I mean,
Right.
in nature, survival matters, not
Right.
reality. I mean, yeah, you might survive better if you're ascertaining reality, but you could also be completely deluded and survive just fine. So sometimes I'll tell atheists, well, as most humans throughout history have been theists, then obviously theism is the most successful Darwinian survival mechanism that ever accidented into being. So then you should convert, because it'll definitely increase your chances of surviving, right? If that's what matters. So what is he? I'll give you a real life example. Remember watching the news when one of these devastating tsunamis hit somewhere and just wiped people out. But they talked about how one tribe, a very primitive tribe, they survived because one of their tribesmen told them, he was, observing the ocean and seeing how it was changing. And he said, we should move inland because the ocean hasn't taken anybody for some time and it's hungry. So they moved inland and a lot of them survived. So that's completely delusional, right?
Mhm.
That's not true, but so what? What does it matter? They followed that delusional advice and they survived. So what?
That's a good point.
Yes, yes, it is.
Have you studied any of the South American religions and Quetzalcoatl and the feathered serpent? And
A little bit, not very much.
what I was trying to do is I was trying to look at all of the primitive native religions and try to find the common themes.
You know what you should do? There's a very little book a long time ago, but I think it's right along the lines of what you're thinking about. It's called Eternity in Their Hearts. And from what I recall, it is essentially goes around the world showing how um, at the core of most cultures, most ancient, what we call myths and legends or just histories, there's a common theme. And the common theme just so happens to coincide with what's in the Bible. It's just been changed in this and that throughout time. And frankly, I tend to take that stuff back to the Tower of Babel, where humanity had a shared, commonly known history.
Right.
But then thereafter, as humanity dispersed, then it got changed in this or that detail. But so how do we end up with all these ancient myths and legends that are so very similar? I think that's probably why. Yeah, Eternity in Their Hearts, it's called.
Okay.
I think you'll find that
Yeah.
really, it's a very quick read and I found it really fascinating.
Okay, I'll look into that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I didn't mean for us to completely monopolize the conversation here. Come on, Dave. But I do enjoy, Ken, when you do come here. I do tend to pick your brain a little bit because I'm interested in, your path. So thank you.
Yeah, and I enjoy listening to you guys because you guys generally discuss stuff about which I know nothing. So I planned tonight, I was just going to listen in while I fixed up my book. But so I've kind of been doing both tonight, is working on the book and chiming in whatever I could.
That's what makes this one the best hangout that there is. Like,
The best.
the best for all the reasons that we didn't tell you about.
Yeah.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Stacy.
Thank you for your prayer.
How was it? Did you go to court today?
No, they canceled. They're still concerned about COVID-19, so the Georgia Supreme Court Justice extended the judicial state of emergency. So, but it'll pass soon enough.
All right.
So yeah, I think are you ready now? Now that your book is about to come out there, Ken? Are you ready for this other book that I told you about? The missing 411 book?
Oh, yes. Actually, now that you mention it or reminded me of it, yeah.
I still have
What
to send
what
it.
is missing 411?
What is that? Well, Missing 411 is a series, book series written by David Paulides, who is, I guess, like a retired police officer, whatever. But it's about people who get, or who, mainly children and whatnot, people that go missing in the United States. And he's got like a whole map and all sorts of stuff. He's got all sorts of cases, all sorts of books. But the one that I was going to send Ken is the one that's Devil is in the Detail, which is all the people that he could find that they went missing or whatever in a place named Devil or Devil's Pond or Demon, something like that, right? Like not that close to me. Like there's a place, it's called like Devil's Hole or Pond or whatever. I don't know what the heck it's called, but it's like devil is in the name of the place, and then people go missing in the place, which is called Devil's Water. You know what I'm saying? So it's like almost like the reason that it's called Devil's whatchamacallit is because people go missing there, right?
Oh, the devil's in the details.
Exactly. See, so that's why he's writing the book. But
An
is it like
interesting
actual?
subject.
Is it actual demons? Like, what is it? Like, what's going on here? Why
I
are
don't
they just
know, but I
disappearing?
bet they had the devil of a time.
Oh yeah, they had a hell of
Hell of a time.
I mean, haven't you seen any of those old movies? You did the movie series, but did you ever see Little Monsters, the movie?
Oh gosh, that does not sound familiar.
Oh my gosh, if you haven't seen Little Monsters, you have to watch it.
Hmm.
Uh, have you ever seen it's the most ridiculous things? The Witches,
Oh, I don't know.
or
I can think of
okay,
many movies that are probably called Witch or The Witch or Witches or.
okay, and then another one is Death Becomes Her, and then another one is Troll 2. Like, if you watch all those movies, like, you might maybe one day understand where I'm coming from because I watched
Okay,
all.
Death becomes Death Becomes Her is definitely awesome.
Yeah, definitely. See, and dude, what's the pink bile stuff that they get like from
Oh,
the
huh? Yeah,
like? What is that all about?
yeah.
You know, that name sounds familiar, Death Becomes Her, but I don't remember uh, what it's about or if I've actually watched it. What's the plot, if there is?
Oh my gosh, you just have to watch it. But you want to tell him, Ken?
Well, I mean, for one, it's not exactly a horror movie. It's more like um, it's almost like more of a comedy. It's more like an
Okay.
ironic comedy because the bottom line is that these people get involved with some kind of secret society that found the elixir of life, right? You could have eternal life. But the problem is your body's still
Oh, okay.
susceptible to
Is that the one
falling
with,
apart, to injury,
is
to
that
decay, and
right? Is that the one with Bruce Willis in it then?
Meryl
um,
Streep.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
I've
you
seen it.
are
I've seen
correct.
it.
That is
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I saw it. All right.
Goldie Hawn is it, and Meryl
Yeah.
Streep,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's the irony of it. Again, we're back to the Faustian bargain is, yeah, okay, you could have eternal life, but your body's going to fall apart still. So you'll be alive and you're going to be in this body that's just falling to pieces. Yeah.
Or it'll be in Futurama
exactly.
and the head will be in a jar.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very
Oh, good.
philosophical, the proverbial head in a jar.
Hmm.
Kind of to me, it's interesting because if you don't have the right materials for your body, like yeah, you will fall apart. So it is kind of like, are they trying to tell you something? Well, I don't know. Is it a trap?
Yep. It's the old careful what you wish for.
Maybe.
Like many, many decades ago when Saturday Night Live was funny. I don't know if anybody can remember way, way back that far. But they did an episode where somebody was suing the devil because he would do things like one of the ones I remember is the woman made a deal with the devil to be the best hairstylist ever. So she'd give people these absolutely amazing haircuts, but she went out of business because after cutting their hair once, that's all they ever needed. So never came back. You know what I mean?
Well, that's kind of like King Midas, right? With his wish,
Right.
turn everything into gold. So I mean that's
Yeah.
been going
I
on.
mean, that dude had to be careful when he went to the bathroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. You guys still haven't uploaded a rim shot sound effect?
No, no. We don't do sound effects here. Like, ding, ding.
Come on, I mean,
Well,
odd snore.
there is one sound effect that we tend to get, and it's crickets.
oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Snoring. We get snoring.
AKA silence.
And there we saw the Nephilim, and we were as crickets in their sights.
Yeah, crickets. Forget grasshoppers. We were crickets.
Yeah.
In our own sight. Everybody always forgets about the in our sight.
Yeah. Yep. Mhm. So how's everybody been faring through all this stuff? Because at we've been doing smaller church home groups through Zoom, just like we are doing this chat, and they kind of asked, "Oh, how's it been for everybody?" And I kind of felt bad that I was going to say, "I've been loving it. This has been great for me."
Well, I'm an introvert, and
Me too. Yeah,
I
me
would
too, big time.
absolutely love this, but I feel like I'm on the verge of losing my mind. But that's through
Oh, really? Oh,
external circumstances and stuff. So
okay.
basically, I just turn on Sirius Satellite Spa, and just listen to music, and then just shut my eyes and just try to breathe.
Mm. See, I know a lot of people have just different. I'll give you an example. So a friend of mine who always kind of tended towards depression, he ended up moving to Portland or Eugene, just Oregon in general for a while, and he couldn't hack it after a while because it's always gray and rainy there. So he just could not deal with it.
Hmm.
And yeah, some people are just built for different things like that. Whereas I was thinking today, if you held a gun to my head and asked me when this whole stay-at-home stuff started, I could not tell you. I literally have no idea because time has flown for me like crazy, just absolute crazy.
Yeah, it has sped up, it seems.
But I thank God I've been able to work from home. I got a family here, and things have gone quite well. I'll come see you in a minute. Okay.
We've talked about the virus and the pandemic and stuff. I don't even wear a mask anymore if I go out, but I don't go out unless I have to. I'm actually
Well,
using the opportunity to save gas money because I'm not driving to all the Bible studies and going to the grocery store all the time. So I just go in and get out.
right. Yeah. Well, see, even I'm sure I've mentioned this to you guys before that I always joke that I don't know if I had a premonition or what, but months before all this stuff started, I went to my employer and asked if I could telework. It was like, no, no way, it's not going to happen. Ain't going to happen. No way. All of a sudden, it was like, everybody stay home.
Hmm.
It's like, if you would have listened to me, we would have been better prepared to have a bunch of employees trying to get onto the same server at the same time. But no, all of a sudden, hundreds of people are trying to get on the same work server, and things are really slow and not working well. So now I've just been telling them, keep me home. Even when we're allowed to go back, keep me home. This is where I want to be.
The day flies by for sure. At night, for me, it can get drawn out. And
Yeah, I could see that. I try to stay busy until maybe 9 o'clock. 9:30 is when everybody brushes their teeth and stuff, and then when I plop down in bed and watch TV till I zonk out. Yeah, I mean, I'm just try to keep occupied with something or other. Like today, I was thinking, okay, I'm just about done with this book, and I already know the next two that I want to write. So I got to start getting busy already.
Well, you know, I like linguistics. I used to be a linguist, so you know, I'm teaching myself Latin, Koine,
Oh, very
uh, you know,
pointing
things
Greek.
like that. I'm a musician. I play multiple instruments, so I could be using this time to like really do all this, and then, you know, it just like, well, what is really is important to me, and I've gone into this Descartesian doubt
Mm-hmm.
period now where I'm like, well, it's all an illusion, you know.
Well, law of identity. It is what it is. Meaning it's not an illusion, right? It's an absolute.
Yeah, well, what about ego? Is ego an illusion?
I thought ego were uh, toaster waffle things.
That's ego.
That's why the Buddha said, "Let go my ego."
Hmm. Now, is it the Buddhists or I think it's the Buddhists, isn't it? Or is it the Hindus that they want nirvana, which is total nothingness?
Well, the Buddhist is the one that ordered the pizza and said, "Make me one with everything." Come on, give me something.
Uh,
Make me one with everything. That's good
yeah.
stuff. Frankly, my biggest issue with Hinduism and Buddhism, because remember, or keep, or be aware that Buddhism is basically watered down Hinduism in a manner of speaking. That's what the Buddha was a Hindu, and then he came up with his own sort of rejected parts of it, kept parts of it, and then you have Buddhism. But to me, the goal of both of them ultimately is to become a human vegetable. I'm not sure how else to put it.
Hmm.
Because when you look at the cycles of karma, um, when we use karma in such a loose way, usually it's hard to really understand what it truly is. But the point is, you want to be completely unmoved by happiness or sadness, by joy or suffering. You want to be as completely unmoved and detached as possible
You
from
want to
all of
be
it.
as unhuman as possible.
That's right. That's the goal, is because if you live a life of joy and happiness and benevolence and all that stuff, well, you still are going to have to come back and pay off your karma. Now, it might be good karma. You might actually have a very enjoyable life, but your ultimate goal would still be to gone from that whole cycle. You want to be rid of it altogether and go to nirvana instead. So that's really the way to do it. It's just to become detached and unmoved from anything and everything. Ultimately, that's your salvation. So there's no real way to do it in the real world except to really become a human vegetable. That's the real goal in life, as far as I've been able to understand all that stuff.
Kind of sounds like a coping mechanism.
Well, sure, because it's like saying, well, what about suffering? Well, it's an illusion. And I'm not kidding. When I was in martial arts, I remember one day we're getting ready for class and one of the students came in really distraught. She was really feeling badly. And I overhear the teacher, who was very much into Buddhism as well as Taoism, just told her, oh gosh, what's the famous Buddhist line about suffering? Is something to the likes of that: if you do away with attachment, you'll do away with suffering. It's something like that. If
Mhm.
you if you detach, then you won't suffer. That kind of thing. And I was thinking that's a horrendously terrible thing to tell
That's apathy.
somebody
It's
who's
apathy.
Yeah, and so, you know, before when she was done talking to him, I kind of called her over and gave her a little bit of gospel. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Good for you.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank God for that. Okay, I can honestly say I think that I'm ready to publish my book, which is
All
incredible.
editing is done.
Yes, well, I tell you what happened, and to me, I was slapping myself in the forehead. Well, you guys know that that's how I figured out how elongated skulls came about, right? It's like obsessive face palming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I actually wrote that into this book, by the way.
that's
But
awesome.
what happened is I mentioned to you guys that the publisher I use, Kindle Direct, has a limit of like 800 pages. Well, this book is more than 800, so I had to break it up into 2 volumes. And what happened is one of them was turning out to be 700 pages or so, and the other one like 300. So to me, that was just so uneven, but I couldn't help it because the way the chapters broke up, um, if I moved the last chapter in volume 1 to volume 2, it would cause the same imbalance. Then the first book would be 300, the second one would be 700. It was still messed up. So today I just finally thought, hey, I'm going to just rearrange some of the chapters, and I'm uh, happier with the way that they turned out now. I think they make a little bit more sense. And now we are at, one volume is, including footnotes, 523, and the other one is 568. So they're just about perfect. They're just about even. It's so cool the way it worked out.
So are they going to be purchasable separately or both as a unit, like you have no choice?
Um, the way, okay, so I have to release them through Kindle and to Amazon, and they're going to be 2 separate books.
It's better for you.
Well,
It's like,
but
stay
I'm,
tuned till next time. Will Goku survive? We'll find out
yeah,
next time.
no, but I'm releasing them at the same time, though.
I'm just kidding. You know.
No, I know what you're saying, but I didn't want to kind of, I wanted people to just say, if you're interested in this, you can have both right now. I'm not playing a game of like making you wait. And then the thing is, the system forces you to, they tell you what the minimum price is because they have to account for their printing and all that. So it's not like I could charge $1 for these, right? Paperbacks. They force you
Yeah.
to charge a certain amount, and then you can charge more if you want to. But so I'm
Right.
definitely going to price these as cheaply as I can, as close to the cheapest I possibly can, because I feel bad that I wanted to write 1 book and I ended up having to publish 2. So I kind of feel bad about that, but I didn't know what else
Yeah.
to do.
But see, again, you were forced into doing that. You didn't want to do that, and now, at least if the people hear this recording, they'll know that you weren't trying to write 2 books. You were trying to write 1, but the way that you have to do things right now, it just so happens there's no way to do 1 apparently.
Yeah, I can't be like Steve Quayle and have my books cost like $150 each, you know.
Right, dude? Oh my god.
Collector's items. Yeah. To tell you the truth, I had put these books through the system to the point where they were going to be published and they only weren't because there was an error with the cover design. They needed a little bit more room to put the barcode. So it stalled it. And that's what gave me today to go, wait a minute. Let me actually fix this. So I think that would be a better product now with 2 books that are about the same size. It all worked out in the end.
Yeah, it seems like it. I mean,
And let me
How
tell
many
the
you,
will you
price is
sell?
I'm sorry.
How many will you sell?
Oh gosh, I wouldn't even know how to guess that. I tell you, one of the big things authoring books, the game in town is marketing. And marketing is super expensive. And frankly, I don't have the money or the know-how. And that's what's definitely will make the difference, especially if you're an unknown nobody like I am. I'm just, I'm totally unknown. So unless that's the game in town, is just having good marketing. So for instance, some of the guys I'm writing about, so anyhow, let me just back up. This is going to be called Nephilim and Giants as per pop researchers. So these are all like the popular level guys you'll run across talking about these topics all over YouTube and through their books and stuff. And some of them are literally unknown online, never heard of them, not active. You have no idea who they are. And then overnight, they're doing interviews, they're putting out DVDs, they've got the book, they're going on lecture tours, they're in conferences, just like that. And all I can think of is they have good marketing. I couldn't imagine any other way that that's happening. Unless it's a Faustian bargain.
It's not even just the marketing, but it's also the topic. Like, people just love to hear about like Nephilim giant hybrids. So like, that makes the Bible so much more awesome. Like, now I love the Bible because like, look at how more awesome it is. Like, that's why God had to kill those people after the flood. Oh, it's because they were Nephilims. Now I
Well, you
forget
know
about
what? One thing I mentioned in
it's like,
here,
what?
one thing I talked about in here is if you go on Amazon, okay, and you just do a search for the word Nephilim, you'll get hundreds and hundreds of romance novels. I'm not kidding. It's a cottage industry. It's been
Oh,
pretty
dude,
amazing.
oh,
Yeah,
oh my God.
yeah, it's pretty
I don't even
amazing.
know about that.
It's like the succubus incubus thing, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah,
Love it.
no question.
Mm.
And so, yeah, they turn it into like this romantic thing. Yeah.
Well, they definitely do love their Nephilims. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
God forbid you take away their Nephilim giants and their hybrids, and I mean that's like half the leeway for the aliens. Like, even if there are aliens, like, doesn't have to do anything with this, like, because that's not what Genesis says. So, I don't know.
But at least whatever your view is on that issue, you'll at least know exactly what these guys are claiming from their own mouths. I mean, just an endless array of examples of what they're claiming. And it's pretty shocking to see, I must say. And especially because, okay, so I'm usually the monkey in the middle. There's a lot of the stuff they say I agree with, but my goodness, the majority of what they're claiming is just biblically unsubstantiated. There's just no question about it when you're actually looking at it as a serious researcher and not just somebody who's wanting to take sides or popularize one point of view. When you actually look at the data itself, it's just pretty shocking, pretty stunning.
Exactly. That's what people have to do. They have to look at the data rather than just getting their, emotions, whatever, involved.
It,
Well, those are the modes of persuasion, right? Logos, ethos, and pathos. You kind of need all three.
and then I had one chapter just discussing how many of these guys also write fiction. They also write fictional books, and my take is, well, that's pretty much what they're doing when they claim to actually be doing theology. So it's no
It's
stretch.
L. Ron Hubbard, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's no stretch at all then to go from, well, you're basically concocting tall tales already. So there's not much of a stretch for you then saying, hey, I'm actually writing a fictional book now. Well, okay, that's what you've been doing all along. You just don't seem to recognize that. It's pretty stunning. I mean, I'm not sure, you know, the old question, does art imitate life or does life imitate art? It's like, I'm not sure where the line is between those two when it comes to this stuff. At least in their minds, I mean, I definitely know where that line is, but I'm saying those guys don't seem to recognize where the line is.
It's
Yep.
interesting how different cultures have, looked at and expressed their art, because you've got the Greeks and their art was idealistic, creating anatomical figures that are impossible. And then you've got the Romans, that they were fat and bald and right. So you got different ways to look at art.
Oh, well, I'll tell you one interesting thing about that is it's well known that one of the things Alexander the Great did is when he would be basically on his campaigns, you know, when they would have to stop somewhere in somebody's country and set up camp, then obviously when they move on, they leave a lot of it behind. Because there was just certain things that somebody builds when they're just in town for a while, right? So Alexander the Great is somewhere in some forest or field, and his men are there chilling out for a while, weeks or months recovering and getting stuff, and then they move on. Well, they leave a bunch of stuff behind. Obviously, they can't take everything with them. So what he would do is purposefully build things that were oversized so that when he left and the people would say, oh, let's go check out what they left behind. Like, wow, man, Alexander must have some giants in his army. I mean, look at this stuff.
Mhm.
Gigantic, huge. Yeah, that was really, really fascinating to learn.
Art being a form of propaganda.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. It was meant to spread the word, you know, watch out for Alexander and his army. He's got some
See,
giants.
and that's what's even more funny because you might see a giant block and be like, "Oh my God! Like, look how big those are." But facade, like Matthew was talking, he was just building the facade earlier of his house or something, right? So the facade means fake. It's a fake. It's false. So you could have like thousands and thousands of little bricks or whatever making up this thing, but then you could make a facade over it, a false face. You could make it look like one block, even though it's, a crap ton of little ones, because you just plaster over it and you make it look like a bigger brick. You see what I'm saying?
Right, right.
If you're
I
doing
mean,
that, like it's all in the image. Like it's all what you perceive. If you see from a distance, we got giant blocks and we got huge things. There you go.
yeah, in fact, I remember, I don't know if he came up with it, but on Rob Skiba's Facebook page, he had posted an image of an ancient Central American location, I think it was. And he was asking, oh, who were these steps made for? Because the photograph was one of those ancient megalithic sites with people climbing up these gigantic steps. They were just enormous, right? But I was asking, well, what makes you think that those are steps? I mean, just because a bunch of tourists are climbing them, that doesn't mean they're steps.
Exactly.
If you look
Yeah.
at ziggurats, right? You look at ziggurats like Central American Mayan ziggurats. They had very large segments, right, going all the way up, the step pyramid. But those were just the construction. The actual steps where people walked were between those. I mean, just because they're in the shape that you call a step doesn't mean that they were meant to be walked on. It's just part of the structure of the building where there's stairs built for people to climb on, and those are regular sized.
Yeah, maybe they were meant to be something more philosophical, like plateaus.
Well, they are, right. Absolutely. They were just meant to emulate a mountain, right? If you look at the typical ziggurat, that's what it is. You have a large platform, it goes up, block shape to the next one that looks just like it, but is a little smaller, and up another one, up another one, up another one. They're basically man-made mountains, and just meant to, yeah, give you the impression of ascension. But that doesn't mean that anybody was ever supposed to be able to walk up those things. The stairs are definitely regular sized. So my problem is this stuff also becomes a worldview. And that's why they would look at ancient architecture and say, oh, this had to be what I claim it was. So I point out in the book, it's a non sequitur to conclude that large things must have been built by and for large people.
Hmm.
Just a basic level non sequitur. Just because you have an exciting theory that says that doesn't mean it's so. Just because you're using your theory to read literally not just the Bible, but all of history, that's what ends up happening, is it's applied to all of history. That's one of my main concerns I talk about in the book is one of the quotation that's going on the cover and the title page is that Steve Quayle says that Nephilim are the Rosetta Stone for understanding the Bible. And then Skiba quoted him from hearing him another time talking about how they're the Rosetta Stone to understanding all of history, which there is.
Cannot agree with that premise.
No, there's literally, it's shocking. I must say, just bluntly, it's shocking that anybody would even conceive such a thought, much less quote it with approval. But that, I'm telling you that as an example, that's what happens.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, the entire Bible and all of history itself is interpreted. It becomes a hermeneutic. Yeah. Well, folks, for me, it's past 10, so I think I'm gonna call it a night.
Thank you for coming back on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It always is. Ladies and gents, I bid you all a good night. Sleep tight.
Good
Sounds
night,
good.
Ken.
Good night. God bless.
Night, farewell, Alvida, sing. Yeah, you know that one.
Are we still recording? Oh, I guess we are.
Yeah. Still.
Well, somebody say something intelligent then.
Oh, we were just saying intelligent stuff. Yeah. I mean, I can go push unrecord, but that requires me to go downstairs, so it's going to take me a minute. So I'd rather just sit here and keep recording. So, come on, nobody else has any other topics or anything? Like nothing? Nobody? Find that to be like.
I haven't had much to say lately. I just, you know, I usually fall asleep halfway through, wake up, and then just working too hard. Or not too hard, but hard enough. I don't remember the last time I picked up my Bible.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember like I picked it up just to move it though. Like it's just like I didn't read it, but I picked it up and I moved it.
Well, my main Bible's on my phone, but I do get a devotional from my pastor every day since this virus thing has been keeping everyone at home. And I do get a verse of the day, you know, and I look at that too. I'm always thinking about the Bible a lot, but though as far as like definitely reading it, I don't, you know, do that lately unless it's here when we go through our scriptures.
Yeah. My day is spent. Okay, God, Could you help me do this? Help me figure this out.
Well,
Help me figure this out. Huh?
today was the first day that I drove down my driveway not being completely terrified
About what?
about what happened last week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been looking into security.
Definitely.
Hmm?
Definitely something to look into for sure.
I don't know if I want monitored though, because I'm going to be working at home. You know what I mean? Is that Matthew? Oh, that must have been Stacy's mom.
You're gonna work from home.
What?
This is the fourth time tonight my mother's woken up.
Okay, fair enough.
One of those nights.
So you gotta go.
No, she went back to bed now.
Well, that was quick.
How does that song go? Something about Stacy's mom?
No, no, we shall not bring that song. That's a different song.
I don't remember what it was about, but now that you say that.
Yeah, Stacy's mom has got it going on like this.
That's what it
wrong,
is. Yeah.
wrong vibe, I think. Wrong kind of
Where'd
Stacy.
Firefly go? She probably fell asleep.
Oh, come on. You guys are on the West Coast. It's easy for you to stay awake.
Oh,
Oh,
It's past midnight for us.
I'm telling you, like I have been so zonked. I can hardly stay awake till 9:30.
really? You're gonna let an East
It's
Coast
almost
person beat you?
9:30.
I know, but I already had a nap.
Oh, there she is. You woke her up. See, you
When
must
my
have gotten
daughter
to her.
called, that's what woke me up.
Did you stop the recording?
Not
No,
yet.
what should I?
Yes.
Let's stop it.
Yes.
We'll wait. We'll
You-
wait for you.
You haven't given me a good reason, but I'll do it for you.
Maybe
We
I don't
just
have a
want
good
to
reason.
talk.
I don't want to feel like I'm being spied on and recorded.
Oh, you're
But I
being
guess I
spied on
already
and
am
recorded,
anyway,
whether it's
so-
being recorded or not.
What difference does it make? I don't want to be spied on while I'm being spied on.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Hey. Yeah.
Here's some music for you, Stacy.
What was that?
That's my son upstairs with his dad went and bought him I guess it's an electric guitar.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So he just sits up there and strums like these over and over. he's teaching himself. Are you a self-taught musician?
Well, I'm classically trained in the piano, so I use that music theory and that understanding, and I translate it over into other instruments. But it's been months since I picked up the harp.
You play a harp?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's why they were talking about. Was it you who said if you turn the piano sideways,
That's
then
that's
you play
exactly
the
right.
harp?
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Where do you get a harp? Man,
It was
weird.
actually given to me as a gift by a complete stranger.
By a complete stranger. Love it. Awesome.
So my TV stand has been broken for a long time, hey?